get ready with me while I tell you my first birth story. I was fascinated with birth before we even got married. Natural birth and hearing different women's birth stories. So I knew that I kind of wanted that to be my experience, but I really didn't know how or like what the options were around here. So I was actually at work one day. I was a liaison for one of the major hospitals in Nashville, and I was in an elevator and I saw a lady with a tag on that the bottom of it said midwife, and I was like, oh, there's midwives here. I didn't even know there were any like around here. And she was like, went to step off the elevator and was like, yeah, I work at the birth center, you should check it out. And just like the doors closed. And so I did. I looked into it and I thought, yeah, I think I want to do that. Everyone thought I was crazy. Why would you want to have an unmedicated birth? I don't know. I was just drawn to it. You know, I knew a little bit at the time about risks of interventions and things, but not a ton. I just knew that the experience of an unmedicated birth was something that I was drawn to. And I also knew that I wanted a doula. So I interviewed several early on and immediately clicked with my doula, who has now been with me for all three of my babies. I love her dearly. She's a great mentor of mine. That pregnancy up until the third trimester was very smooth. And then in my third trimester, like towards the beginning, I was still driving to Nashville every day. I just carry really big. Belly gets pretty big. And I was feeling like, I'm kind of crampy. I don't know if this is normal or not. And I was just at a regular prenatal at the birth center. And I mentioned it and I said, hey, I'm having these like kind of cramps come and go. I was about 32 weeks. And she said, well, would you like me to do a cervical exam on you and just make sure nothing is happening? I was actually just gonna not get any cervical exams through the pregnancy, through birth, if I could avoid it. But something about that felt right. And I said, yeah, actually I would like for you to do that. And she checked me and I was 2 to 3 centimeters and like 80% effaced at 32 weeks. Not great. So they ended up giving me the steroid shots and saying, you know, we need to kind of do a bed rest type situation for the rest of pregnancy, and would have lots of Braxton Hicks, lots of prodromal labor, lost my mucus plug shortly after. Yeah, but held baby boy in until 37 and 2. And the night before I had him, it was like 10 p.m. I was trying to settle down to go to sleep, and I was keyed up. I was pacing around the room. I was picking up my belly. I was crying and telling my husband, I'm so done. I can't do this anymore. Not because I was like actively contracting or in labor. I was miserable with being pregnant. And at 37 and 2, that's, you know, that was a little early to be miserable. So I could not calm myself down. Took my blood pressure. It was high. Of course it was, because I was worked up. You know, called the birth center, was all worked up about it. And they said, you know, try these things, rest a little bit, take it again, let's see what it is. Still high. They said, okay, come in, let's see what's going on. So I went in. It was high when I got there, to the point that they said you need to go over to the hospital for monitoring. So I did that. Still high at the hospital, but I was actually not having any contractions, nothing reading on the monitors, anything like that. Was right on the line for a couple of readings, just under the threshold for them to say, you can go home and we will have you come back to the birth center in a day or two, and we're gonna, you know, talk about next steps and kind of monitor this and see what's going on. So I was exhausted. We were exhausted because we had been up all night being monitored. Got home, laid down and took a nap. Like, I kind of want to go on a little walk. I took one little walk around my neighborhood, and then I came back home about 10 a.m., 10, 11, and I sat down in a chair, and I felt the most clear pop and warm feeling all down. And before I even stood up, I looked at my husband and I said, my water just broke. And he was like, are you sure? And I said, I'm positive when I stand up, there's going to be water. I just knew that that's what that was. And sure enough, it did. Called my doula, called the midwives, and they were like, hang out. Let's see if contractions start. You know, no need to rush in. You know, it was maybe 30 minutes or so, and I started feeling crampy. And I was like, well, let me just get in the bath. And I got in the bath, and pretty quickly I was like, I have a 45-minute drive to the birth center. If it gets much more intense than this, I really don't want to ride in the car. So let's just go ahead and move things along. Let's go. We got in the car, rode to the birth center. When I got there, I was about 5 centimeters, 100% effaced, and I was in it. So I was actually walking in, and I think that the nurse was leading me to another room, but I saw the first door open to the first suite, and I walked in. I was about to have a contraction, and I leaned over and I started stripping my clothes off, and she's like, okay, yep, this works too. You can stay here. Very obvious. You know, they like you to be about 6, but it was obvious that I was very much in labor. And so the next couple of hours I labored in the tub, and then I got out and went in the bathroom and labored on the toilet in the dark by myself. And that's where I think I went through transition. I got out and I got back in the tub because they do allow you to deliver in the water at the birth center that I was at. And I thought that's what I would want to do. And I remember actually thinking I was kind of pushy. And so she checked me and she was like, you're like 9.5, just a little bit of a lip. And I just smiled. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I've only been here for like, what was that at that point? 2 or 3 hours. I'm a first time mom and I'm complete. This is crazy. And I thought, I've done it. It's over. I made it. Did it. Done. Just got to push the baby out, but that won't take long. So I started pushing in the tub, and I just could not. Their tubs are pretty narrow, and I really couldn't get like a good grip and like a good position. So I decided to get out, and I like to tell people at this phase, I was like Mama Gorilla, fully naked, walking around, like just trying to grab onto things. Like they have these Swedish bars you can squat. I could not find a position that worked. And I was exhausted. And I eventually ended up just pushing on my back in the bed because that's what felt right. Not because anybody forced me there, but that's just what felt right. And I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. And it was like, ugh, like I was pushing. I just remember like thinking, I don't even know where I'm pushing right now. Like, I don't know. I think I'm doing this right. I have no idea. And I had my very sweet Christian birth playlist playing in the background. But I am dropping every curse word, you know. I know this because I have it on video. Over top of these beautiful Christian songs. Just because I was just trying to use every bit of grit and strength that I had to get him out. And eventually, there he came. He was out. I couldn't believe it. You know, they tell you to reach down and feel, and I could feel his head. And I heard everyone saying, yes, hair. And I was like, and I actually asked after he was out, I was like, is he out? And so if people just heard the audio of my birth, they would probably think you had an epidural, because how could you not know he's out? But there's just so much intensity and sensation that I was like, needed someone to confirm for me that he was out. He needed a little stimulation, but then he let out a cry, and yeah, I was kind of in shock. Placenta came pretty easily. I did have a hard time peeing after, and bleeding was a little heavy after. Could not get myself to pee, so they did end up having to cath me after, which was not a super pleasant experience after you've delivered a baby and you think you're done. But it was fine. Had a 1st-degree tear, and then we settled in for about 12 hours at the birth center. And that is the birth story of my son. And it was intense but beautiful, and I just like was so proud of myself. I could not believe that I actually did it. And that's not to say if it doesn't go exactly how you envision that you did something wrong. Sometimes the Lord has something different intended for people that teaches us about all kinds of different things. I will tell you, I've seen a lot of moms have to surrender in different ways than they thought they were going to have to through birth. But anyways, that is my first birth story. Let me know if you enjoyed hearing it and would like to hear my other 2.